Have you ever woken up with the feeling that something just slipped away? Like a dream was whispering to you, and the moment you opened your eyes, it disappeared? You try to remember, but there's nothing. Only a soft emptiness. Only a strange quiet in your chest. But what if forgetting isn't a problem to solve, but a hidden doorway to something deeper? What if your forgotten dreams are not lost at all, but alive in the spaces between breath and being? Tonight on Sleep Dharma, we invite you to let go of needing to remember and simply listen to the silence, to your body, to the part of you that already knows the way home. If this speaks to something inside you, subscribe to this space. We walk this path gently week by week. And in the comments below, share with us, what do you feel in that strange place between dreaming and waking? Sometimes the conversation begins where the dream ends. Part 1, the sound of forgetting. It always starts the same way. Just before sunrise, when the world is still half asleep, Emma wakes with a faint, restless sigh. Her eyes open to the soft blue-gray hue of morning. There's quiet all around her. No alarms, no urgent calls, not even the hum of traffic yet. Just a kind of silence that feels incomplete. She lies still, staring at the ceiling, trying to catch something. A thread, a whisper, a shadow from the night. Something was there. She's sure of it. A dream, vivid and real, had just danced through her mind like candlelight in the dark. But now it's gone, vanished like mist in the morning sun. And in its place, an odd, hollow ache, a sense that something important was just lost. Again, why does this keep happening? Why can't she remember? It's not that she's not dreaming. She can feel the weight of them, like echoes still clinging to her skin. But every morning, when she reaches for them, they slip away. And that emptiness they leave behind stays. Emma presses her hand gently against her chest, as if trying to feel the shape of a memory that no longer has a name. She closes her eyes, hoping it might come back. But all that returns is silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that leaves her feeling strangely incomplete, like a story that never found its ending. Maybe you've felt this too. Maybe you've woken with that same strange longing for something you couldn't quite hold on to. And maybe you've wondered, what are these dreams we forget? Are they just nonsense? Or are they something more? In Buddhist teachings, dreams are not dismissed as meaningless flickers of the mind. They're seen as gentle whispers from a deeper consciousness. Messages not just from our past or fears or desires, but from the vast, unseen ocean of awareness we're all floating in. And when we forget them, it's not because they're unimportant. It's because we're not yet ready to remember. You see, forgetting is its own kind of grace. Just like the ocean draws back before it reveals the shore, sometimes life draws back our memories, not to erase them, but to prepare us, to make space, for healing, for insight, for awakening. But try telling that to Emma, lying there with her breath caught between sleep and wakefulness, feeling like something slipped through her fingers again. She doesn't know it yet, but this feeling, that ache of forgetting, isn't a mistake. It's an invitation, an opening, a doorway into something far more beautiful than a remembered dream. It's a doorway into presence, into release, into the subtle awakening that only forgetting can offer. And this story, Emma's story, and maybe yours, isn't really about dreaming at all. It's about letting go and discovering what was waiting beneath all along. Let's begin. Part 2, the silent messengers. Emma moved through the morning like a ghost walking through her own life. The kettle hissed softly on the stove. The light filtered in through the kitchen blinds, casting long pale stripes across the floor. But she wasn't really there. Not fully. Not yet. She sipped her tea and stared out the window. The world was waking up, but something inside her still felt asleep. There had been something in that dream. She could feel it in her bones, even if she couldn't name it. A kind of knowing that reached beyond words, like someone had tried to tell her something in a language she used to understand, but had forgotten. She looked down at her hands. They trembled just slightly, and then the thought came, what if dreams are not something to remember with the mind, but to feel with the heart? That's when she began noticing the messengers. Started small, a feather on the sidewalk, so white and perfectly shaped it looked placed there on purpose. A stranger at the coffee shop who said something, out of the blue, that mirrored the exact feeling she woke up with. A line in a book that made her pause, close her eyes, and whisper, "Wait, I felt this before." It was like life was continuing the conversation her dream had started, but in whispers, not in the grand, dramatic symbols she used to expect from her dreams, but in the subtle nudges, the quiet invitations, the half glances and barely there synchronicities that seemed to say, "You may not remember the dream, but the dream remembers you." Buddhism teaches that the mind doesn't end at the edges of our skull. It stretches far beyond, into the formless field of awareness where everything is connected, where time is not linear and messages can arrive from places the waking mind cannot comprehend. Dreams, in this view, are not mere nighttime hallucinations. They are sacred letters from the unconscious, soaked in metaphor and carried across dimensions of memory and karma. But like sacred letters written in disappearing ink, their true meaning only appears when we stop trying so hard to read them, because sometimes the forgetting is what makes room for the message. There's a Zen teaching that says, "When the flower blooms, the bee will come." Emma didn't have to chase her dreams to understand them. She only had to become still enough, gentle enough, curious enough for their echo to arrive in other forms. Like the way her dog sat that morning, staring into space, ears perked like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. Like the old song that played in the grocery store that afternoon, one she hadn't heard since childhood, and yet suddenly, it made her chest tighten with emotion she couldn't explain. Each moment became a soft knocking on the door of her awareness, not with answers, but with presence. And slowly, Emma began to realize, forgetting her dreams didn't mean she was missing her messages. It meant she was being asked to live them, to feel them in the texture of her day, the pauses in conversation, the silence between thoughts, to stop waiting for big revelations and begin noticing the sacred in the small. Isn't it strange how we often think we need clarity, when what we truly need is connection? And maybe that's what these forgotten dreams are doing, pulling us out of the illusion that wisdom only comes in lightning strikes, and reminding us that the soft rain teaches. 2. Emma didn't write down her dreams that day. She didn't meditate or seek answers or flip through a dream journal. She just listened to the sound of birds outside her window, to the moment she locked eyes with an old man in the park and both of them smiled, like they shared a secret neither of them could name. And in that quiet knowing, she felt her first real peace in weeks, not because she remembered, but because she didn't need to anymore. The dream had found another way to speak, and she had finally begun to listen. Part 3. The space between worlds. There's a moment right before sleep takes us, not quite awake, not yet dreaming. The soft, liminal, like standing in the hallway between two very different houses, one filled with clocks and expectations, and the other humming with ancient winds, where time dissolves and the self becomes mist. That's where Emma found herself later that evening. She wasn't trying to sleep. Not exactly. She lay on her side, blankets pulled up, the hum of the fan brushing across her face like a memory that never fully formed. Outside, the world had gone quiet. A kind of hush had settled, one that felt less like silence and more like waiting, and something in her paused. Her body relaxed, but her awareness didn't vanish like it usually did. It stayed, hovered, not alert but not gone either. It felt like floating in a warm pool, eyes half open under the surface, watching ripples of light. And in that half-wakeful space, she felt it. The other world. Not out there, not some astral realm or fantasy, but here, interwoven with everything she knew. A layer just beneath reality. A frequency just slightly detuned from the everyday. It didn't come with visions or voices.
Justa senza.
Presence. A presence that had no name, but somehow knew hers. In Buddhism, this in-between is sometimes called the bardo, a threshold space. Not just between death and rebirth, but between any two states of being. Between inhale and exhale. Between thought and action. between who you were and who you are becoming. And within that bardo, reality loosens. The roles we play, mother, worker, friend, daughter, soften like old paper left in the rain. The mental chatter grows faint, and what remains is something raw, something unprotected, something free. Emma didn't know it, but she was brushing the edge of a truth far older than her name, that the space between worlds isn't a place you visit. It's a place you are, and it's always with you. It's just that we rush through it so quickly. Desperate to fall asleep, desperate to wake up, we miss the wisdom it holds, the doorway it offers. That night, in that thin space, Emma didn't try to force a dream. She didn't demand clarity. She simply rested in the mystery. And for a moment, there was no fear, no need to remember, no frustration at forgetting. Just this soft unfolding, a sense of being part of something vast and intelligent and kind. A dream not of images, but of stillness. It's funny. She wouldn't remember any dreams when she woke, but she would remember this feeling. Like a gentle hand had touched the center of her chest and whispered, "You are not alone." She didn't need proof. The knowing was enough. And in the days that followed, that presence began to show up in her life more often. Not in fireworks, but in the pauses, the breath she took before answering a hard question, the quiet moment she stood barefoot on her porch, watching a bird carry a twig to its nest, the way the breeze wrapped around her like a scarf made of sky. It was like she had slipped slightly out of sync with the ordinary and into something more spacious, more sacred, more true. In Zen, there's a teaching: before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Emma began applying this to her inner dialogue, too. And in doing so, the way she related to her forgotten dreams shifted completely. She no longer chased them. She honored them. She no longer saw them as lost. She saw them as gifts that had already been opened, just not in the ways she expected. And in that new awareness, something began to bloom. Not answers, but presence. Because sometimes what we think is forgetting is actually transformation. A quiet letting go of the old maps. A surrender to being carried across the sea without needing to see the shore. Emma didn't know where this journey was leading her, but somehow, for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. Part 4. The space between sleep and wakefulness. Emma had always believed that waking up was a simple thing. You open your eyes, you stretch, you start your day. But now she wasn't so sure, because some mornings it felt like she was waking up from something larger than sleep, and not fully waking up at all. There was a gap, a strange, almost weightless moment, where her body felt heavy, her breath slow, her thoughts like moths fluttering against the inside of her skull. She could hear the birds outside. She could feel the pillow under her cheek, but a part of her was still elsewhere. It was as if her soul hadn't quite caught up to her body, and in that gap, she felt everything. A subtle sorrow she couldn't name, a quiet pull toward something she couldn't see, and always the same haunting feeling. Something happened in the night, and I don't remember, but maybe that was the point. Maybe waking up wasn't just about leaving the dream behind. Maybe it was about carrying something from it forward, even if you couldn't explain what. Buddhist teachers often speak of this in-between moment, the fragile golden second between sleep and wake, as a powerful gate, a threshold of consciousness. Because here, before the mind fully reclaims its stories, before the day's worries return like unwelcome guests, the heart is still open. The walls are still soft. The self is still fluid. And in that space, the soul whispers. But we rarely listen. We reach for our phones. We rehearse our to-do lists. We rush to become someone again, to remember who we are, where we live, what we're supposed to care about. And in doing so, we trample the traces of something sacred. Emma was beginning to sense that. So one morning, she did something different. She didn't move. She stayed still, exactly where she woke, eyes closed, her breath quiet. She didn't try to remember the dream. She just listened, and what she heard was silence. But not empty silence. It was the kind of silence that felt like a vast, open sky, holding everything, hiding nothing. And in that silence, she felt the faintest flutter in her chest. Not a memory, not an image, just a feeling, like a wave that had rolled through her during the night and left behind a shimmer. She didn't name it. She didn't analyze it. She received it as a gift. And in that soft receiving, she realized something. Maybe dreams don't want to be remembered like facts. Maybe they want to be lived into. Maybe they're not something we retrieve with effort, but something we absorb through openness. In that space between sleep and wakefulness, Emma felt her mind begin to loosen. Her usual identity, Emma the thinker, the doer, the rememberer, faded like fog. And what emerged instead was simply awareness. Not striving, not fixing, just being. Clear, spacious presence, like the still surface of a pond before the first ripple. And there, in that moment, she caught the tail end of something. Not a dream exactly, but a truth. A feeling of being watched over. Not in the way a camera watches, but in the way the moon watches the ocean. Gently, quietly, with no agenda. It moved her in a way she couldn't explain. And she understood without needing words. This moment is where the healing begins. Not in the remembering, but in the resting. In allowing yourself to be in that tender in-between without needing to name it, own it, or understand it. Just being there. Just being. That morning, Emma didn't rush to rise. She let herself wake slowly, with reverence. And as she sat on the edge of her bed, feet touching the cold wooden floor, she whispered, more to herself than anyone, I may not remember what I dreamed, but I know I was touched by something kind. And with that, she stood, not fully awake, not fully dreaming, but somehow fully alive. Part 5. Healing through the unknown. There's a kind of pain that has no language, a quiet ache that lives not in the bones, but in the spaces between memories. A sorrow that doesn't shout or weep, only lingers, like perfume on an empty coat. Emma felt it more often now, not because she was growing more broken, but because she was growing more aware. You see, when the noise of everyday life softens, even just a little, what's left underneath is not always light and ease. Sometimes what rises is everything you've tried not to feel. And in Emma's case, it wasn't a single grief. It was many little ones. A childhood friend she never said goodbye to. A version of herself she abandoned to be more acceptable. The way her mother once looked at her with pride, before they both learned how to hide behind silence. None of these showed up in her dreams, but their weight did. Each night she felt it, not as memory but as tension, in the way her jaw clenched, the way her hands curled into fists beneath the blanket, the way she often woke not with peace, but with exhaustion. And she began to wonder, what if my dreams are trying to heal me by not showing me everything at once? In Buddhist psychology, there's a word, dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but it's more nuanced than that. Dukkha is the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of clinging to what changes, resisting what is, and fearing what we cannot know. And perhaps the unknown, especially in the dream realm, is not a flaw in the system. Maybe it's the medicine, because if Emma had remembered every dream, every buried sorrow, all at once, it might have crushed her. But the forgetting, that was the body's way of offering compassion. Like a mother covering her child's eyes during a lightning storm, saying, "Not yet, my love, just rest. There will be time for understanding later." So instead of forcing recall, Emma began to soften into the unknown. She stopped treating her mind like a detective. She stopped treating her dreams like puzzles to be solved. And instead, she treated them like rain, felt but not held, known but not explained. She began keeping a small journal beside her bed, not to analyze, but to acknowledge. Each morning, she would write just one line, not about what she saw, but what she felt. One morning it said, "My chest felt heavy, like someone had sat beside me all night." Another, "There was gold light in my belly when I woke. I don't know why, but it felt like forgiveness." And slowly, something began to shift. She noticed her body relaxing more at night. The jaw loosened, the breath deepened, The fear of the unknown began to wear thin, like paper left in the rain. Because healing, she realized, isn't always a breakthrough. Sometimes it's a softening, a loosening of the grip around the need to understand. A surrender to mystery, not as a threat, but as a companion. Emma began seeing the unknown not as an empty void, but as a womb. A place where new awareness could gestate, slowly, quietly, in its own time. And just like the moon doesn't force the seed to bloom, she stopped forcing her dreams to speak. Instead, she just listened to the rhythm of her breath, to the warmth in her belly, to the tears that would sometimes rise for no reason at all. And when they did, she didn't wipe them away in frustration. She welcomed them as part of the night's secret offering, as water poured from the mystery, and somewhere deep inside, where no dream could be recalled and no logic could reach, something was healing. Without her knowing, without her remembering, without her needing to. Just like the body heals wounds while we sleep, the soul has its own quiet way of mending, through forgotten dreams, subtle emotions, and the space we make for not knowing. Emma still didn't remember most of her dreams, but now, when she woke with that familiar ache, she no longer felt lost. She felt held, not by understanding, but by trust. The kind of trust that doesn't need proof to believe the healing is happening. Even here, even now, especially in the unknown. Part 6. The Practice of Dream Surrender. Emma used to clench her fists in sleep. She didn't know this until a morning when she awoke with half-moon marks pressed into her palms, her nails having carved quiet little messages into the skin. Tiny symbols of holding on too tight, to what she couldn't say, maybe to answers, maybe to memories, maybe to the idea that if she just tried hard enough, she could unlock the secrets her dreams were hiding. But dreams, as she was slowly learning, do not open like treasure chests. They open like flowers, and only in the presence of surrender. That word, surrender, once felt like defeat to her, like giving up, like folding. But now it was beginning to take on a softer shape, one that looked less like collapsing and more like bowing, like unclenching her hands, like breathing before asking, like not needing to know to trust. One evening, she created a little ritual. It wasn't fancy, just a small candle on the windowsill, lit before bed. She'd sit quietly beside it, her back against the wall, eyes half closed, hands resting open on her lap. And she'd say, barely louder than a breath, I release my need to remember. I welcome what is meant to come. I trust what I cannot see. Then she'd blow the candle out and let the dark wrap around her like a mother's shawl. This simple act, repeated night after night, began to shift something deep inside her. She didn't expect it to change her dreams. She didn't expect to wake with visions or clarity or epiphanies. But what she did begin to notice was ease, a softening at the edges of her sleep, a peace in the not knowing. The Buddhist path has always been about letting go of craving, of clinging, of the illusion of control. But perhaps the most sacred letting go is the one that happens not in grand gestures, but in the quiet corners of our daily life. Like releasing the need to force a dream into words, or the urge to prove that something happened during the night. Because here's the truth. Sometimes, the most important dreams we have are the ones we never recall. They work beneath the surface, clearing old energy, dissolving karmic patterns, restoring emotional balance. They don't need to be remembered to be real. They don't need to be retold to be sacred. Emma began to view each night not as a performance, but as a pilgrimage, a journey into mystery. And she, the dreamer, was no longer the seeker demanding insight, but the guest arriving humbly at the doors of the unknown, with bare feet and an open heart. That shift from striving to surrender changed everything. She no longer woke with tension in her chest, no longer sighed with frustration when her mind was blank. Instead, she woke with reverence, as if some quiet work had been done in the night. She couldn't name it, she couldn't show it, but she could feel it, in the way her eyes softened when she looked in the mirror, in the patience she found with others, in the silence she was no longer afraid of. Surrender, she realized, is not the absence of effort. It's the presence of faith. And that faith isn't blind. It's deeply intimate. It's knowing, even without proof, that your soul is doing the work it needs to do, even when your mind doesn't get a front row seat. In time, Emma's bedtime ritual grew even quieter. No candle, no words, just a simple pause, a breath, a silent bow in the dark, a way of saying, I trust the part of me that dreams. I don't need to understand it. I only need to receive it. And in that surrender, she found a freedom deeper than any dream could offer. The freedom to rest without searching, to awaken without reaching, to live without needing to hold onto the night. Part 7. Awakening through forgetting. There was one morning that felt different. The sky outside Emma's window was pale gold, the kind that arrives just before spring makes itself known. The air had that gentle stillness, where even the wind seems to be listening. Emma woke slowly, her breath rising soft and steady, her eyes blinking open like a curtain drawing back on a new play. And this time, there was no ache, no reaching, no flicker of loss, just peace. Not because she remembered her dream, but because she didn't need to. Something had shifted, not on the surface but underneath, like tectonic plates moving far below the ocean floor. Invisible but powerful, the kind of change that doesn't shout. It settles in you like a second heartbeat. And this was it. She had awakened through forgetting. In the space where memory used to rush in, there was now stillness. In the place where she used to chase meaning, there was now presence. Emma rose, feet touching the floor without hesitation. Her body moved with a quiet grace, as if the night had aligned something within her. And maybe it had, because sometimes the forgetting is the awakening. We tend to think of enlightenment as a great remembering, as the moment the light bulb turns on and suddenly everything makes sense. But the Buddha's wisdom whispers a deeper truth. Real awakening isn't about knowing more. It's about needing less. It's the falling away of grasping, the crumbling of the self that always wants to hold, to define, to label. It's becoming empty, not in a hollow way, but in the way a bowl becomes useful only when it's no longer full. Emma, without realizing it, had become that bowl. By letting go of the need to recall her dreams, she had made space. Space for the present moment. Space for the mystery. Space for a deeper kind of trust. And in that trust, life began speaking to her more clearly. Not through remembered symbols or dream analysis, but through the gentle unfolding of ordinary days. She noticed the way light fell through trees, the laughter of a child at the park, pure and wild, the way her own breath moved in and out without asking for permission. Each of these she now recognized was a kind of dream, a dream she was awake for, a dream she was part of, because Buddhist teachings remind us this life is a dream too. Not in the sense that it's fake or meaningless, but in the way that it's impermanent, fleeting, fluid. Here then gone, beautiful and ungraspable. So maybe the question isn't, why don't I remember my dreams? Maybe the real question is, what are the dreams I am forgetting to see right now while awake? And in forgetting her dreams, Emma had remembered something far more sacred. That peace doesn't come from collecting memories. It comes from releasing the need to collect at all. It comes from bowing to the unknown with a soft smile, from trusting the night to do its silent work, from meeting the morning not with questions but with open arms. She still lights a candle sometimes. She still listens to the quiet. But now, when people ask her if she dreams, she simply says, yes, every day, even now, even here. And maybe you too are waking into a dream right now. Not the kind your mind can explain, but the kind your heart has always known. So if you can't remember, it's okay. Maybe you were never meant to. Maybe forgetting is the way back home. So if you woke up this morning and couldn't remember what you dreamed, perhaps that too was part of the practice. Maybe your soul was working quietly in the background, healing, releasing, remembering for you. And maybe forgetting was the doorway all along. The Buddha once taught that peace doesn't come from knowing everything, but from letting go of the need to know. So tonight, when you close your eyes, don't search, don't chase, just trust. The dream will come, or it won't. Either way, you are already home. Soft silence. Then a whispering final line. If this touched something in you, leave us a note in the comments below. And if you'd like to keep dreaming with us, subscribe. The journey has only just begun.